Ethan Cade wiped the sweat from his brow as he stepped out of the shuttle. The desert planet stretched endlessly before him, its red sands shimmering under the twin suns. The colony he had been assigned to maintain was small, almost forgotten. Only a few dozen humans lived here, surviving on limited resources and occasional supply drops from the larger human outposts in nearby systems. It was quiet, almost too quiet. He adjusted his utility belt, checking the supplies. Food rations, water packs, repair tools, all accounted for. As he walked toward the storage depot, a faint sound reached his ears. At first, he thought it was just the wind whistling through the jagged rocks. But then he heard it again, a soft, pitiful whimper, almost like a child crying. Ethan froze. No children were supposed to be here. The colony had no schools, no families with young kids. Only adults had survived the harsh conditions of the desert world. He cautiously approached the sound, moving behind a large stack of supply crates. There, huddled in the shadows, was a small figure. At first glance, he thought it might be a human child. But as he looked closer, he realized it was something else entirely. The child was small, no more than 3 feet tall, with thin, fragile limbs and skin that shimmered faintly in the sunlight. Her eyes glowed a soft green, and her hair seemed almost like fine threads of silver. She shivered violently, clutching her stomach, clearly starving. Ethan's heart tightened. He had trained for combat, engineering, and survival, but he had never dealt with something like this. For a moment he hesitated. Could this be a trap? An alien scout sent to harm the colony? But the child looked too weak, too fragile, too human in her vulnerability. He slowly stepped out from behind the crates, keeping his hands visible. Hey there, he said softly. It's okay. I won't hurt you. The child froze, her glowing eyes wide with fear. She made a strange clicking sound and took a tiny step backward. Ethan crouched, lowering himself to her level. He pulled a small ration pack from his belt and extended it toward her. Food? He said. You must be hungry. The child's eyes flickered toward the pack. She sniffed the air, hesitated, and then slowly crawled toward it. With trembling hands, she tore open the pack and devoured the contents with desperate urgency. Ethan watched quietly, fascinated and concerned. When she finished, she leaned back and stared at him. For the first time, she spoke, her voice barely above a whisper, melodic and strange. Thank. Ethan smiled gently. You're welcome. What's your name? The child tilted her head, making another clicking sound. Ethan frowned, realizing he had no idea how to communicate properly. But that didn't matter right now. She was safe, and that was the priority. He decided to take her back to the colony. It would be risky, but leaving her here meant certain death. He scooped her up carefully, feeling how light and fragile she was. She pressed against him as if sensing that he meant no harm. The colony's gates came into view, and with them the startled faces of the settlers. Ethan carried the child forward, ignoring their anxious murmurs. What is that thing? One of the engineers shouted. It's a child. Of some kind, Ethan replied, keeping his voice calm. She's starving. We have to help her. Some colonists stepped back, wary, but others moved forward with curiosity. Ethan gently placed the child on a clean blanket in the common area. The colony medics rushed over, examining her. She's alive, one of them said, relief in her voice, but she's malnourished and dehydrated. We need to feed her slowly and monitor her closely. The child, Ethan still didn't know her name, looked around nervously. She didn't speak again, but her glowing eyes flickered from one human to another. She seemed frightened, yet there was a spark of curiosity in her gaze. Over the next few hours, Ethan stayed by her side. He fed her small portions of nutrient paste and water, and she accepted it without hesitation. Every now and then, she made a soft humming sound, almost like a purr, and pressed her tiny hand against his. By nightfall, she had eaten enough to gain some strength. Ethan sat back and watched her curl up on the blanket. He had never seen anything like her before. Not an alien he had read about, nor a human child. She was unique, fragile, and intelligent, and somehow, he felt a protective instinct he hadn't experienced in years. But as he looked around the colony, Ethan noticed something that made his stomach tighten. The shadows at the edge of the desert seemed alive. Shapes moved in ways that did not belong to wind or rocks. The settlers hadn't noticed yet, but he had. Something was watching them. He shook his head. He was letting his imagination run wild. Maybe it was just the twin suns casting strange reflections. But a nagging feeling told him otherwise. The night was quiet, but Ethan didn't sleep. He kept one eye on the child and another on the horizon. Every now and then he thought he saw a figure, a massive shape that moved with purpose just beyond the dunes. The next morning, Ethan approached the child again. She had slept curled up, her small hands clutching the blanket. He extended his hand gently. "I'm Ethan," he said. "I'm going to take care of you." The child looked at him, and for the first time she made a sound that resembled a word. "Lyra," Ethan smiled. "Lyra, that's a beautiful name. You'll be safe here, Lyra." Over the next few days, Lyra began to show unusual abilities. Her senses seemed heightened. She could detect subtle movements and sounds that humans couldn't. She was faster than any child should be and seemed to understand instructions immediately. The colony grew attached to her quickly, though some were wary. After all, they had seen countless alien species during their time in space, many of them hostile. But Lyra didn't seem dangerous. She responded to kindness, curiosity, and patience. Yet Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that her presence had awakened something far more powerful. One evening, scouts reported strange tracks leading toward the colony. Large footprints, unlike any animal, pressed deep into the sand. The colony's security systems detected unusual energy readings on the perimeter. Ethan's heart raced. He knew it was only a matter of time before Lyra's presence attracted attention. And if what he feared was true, whatever came for her would not be a small, helpless creature. It would be something strong, intelligent, and dangerous, protective beyond reason. He sat beside Lyra that night, watching her sleep. Her small chest rose and fell steadily, her glowing eyes now closed. Ethan wondered what kind of life she had endured before she arrived here. Hunger, fear, loneliness. And yet she had survived. He whispered softly, almost to himself. "I won't let anything happen to you, Lyra, I promise." A sudden rustle in the sand outside made him tense. He stood scanning the perimeter with a night vision scope. There, shadows moved just beyond the colony walls. Shapes that were too large to be animals, too purposeful to be wind-blown debris. Ethan swallowed hard. Whatever was coming, it was coming for her, and he had no idea if humans could stop it. Lyra stirred, sensing his unease. She opened her glowing eyes and reached out a tiny hand, touching his arm. A strange warmth ran through him, a silent reassurance. It was as if she was saying, "I know it's coming. I'm not afraid, but you should be careful." The night dragged on, each sound of the wind or shifting sand making Ethan flinch. The colony slept, unaware of the danger lurking just beyond their walls. Only he and Lyra knew that their lives were about to change forever. By dawn, Ethan had made a plan. He would strengthen the colony's defenses, alert the settlers, and prepare for the arrival of whatever was tracking Lyra. He didn't know what form it would take, but one thing was certain. His act of kindness, feeding a starving alien child, had set into motion events far beyond his control and far beyond his imagination. The sun rose slowly over the desert colony, casting long shadows across the red sands. Ethan Cade moved quietly through the settlement, checking the perimeter sensors and ensuring the gates were secure. Ever since Lyra had arrived, the colony had been alert, but so far no immediate threat had appeared. Still, Ethan felt a constant tension gnawing at his mind. Lyra had woken early, her glowing eyes scanning the horizon. She had changed already in the short days she had been in the colony. Her movements were more confident, her steps lighter, yet there was a watchfulness in her gaze that seemed far beyond her size. Ethan couldn't help but be amazed at how quickly she adapted to human ways while still maintaining her alien grace. "Good morning, Lyra," Ethan said softly, kneeling to her level. "Did you sleep well?" She tilted her head and let out a soft melodic sound, a hum that sounded almost like a laugh. Then she pressed her tiny hand against his arm, the gesture surprisingly comforting. Ethan smiled. It was strange how connected he felt to this small, otherworldly being in such a short time. The colony medics had carefully monitored her health. They were astonished at how quickly her body was recovering from malnutrition. Her energy levels were rising, and she began moving with remarkable agility, running across the rooms and jumping onto elevated surfaces with ease. Her senses seemed extraordinary. She could hear the faintest movements, see in low light, and even detect subtle changes in the air. Ethan decided it was time to begin teaching her some human words. He knew it would help the colony communicate with her more effectively. "Especially if something dangerous arrived, Lyra," he said, holding up a small food packet. "Food." She stared at it for a moment, her glowing eyes flickering with curiosity. Then, almost as if testing him, she repeated the word, "Foo." Ethan laughed softly. "Good, very good." Over the next few hours, they worked together, teaching her more words: water, safe, yes, no. She learned quickly, but often she would combine the words with her alien sounds, creating a strange but endearing language of her own. The colony children, who had only been visiting for a day, gathered at the edges of the common hall, watching her with fascination. "She's amazing," whispered one of the young settlers. "She's different," another replied, eyes wide. "But I think she likes us." Lyra's intelligence became even more apparent when she began understanding complex gestures. She could point to objects, follow detailed instructions, and even anticipate what someone would do next. Ethan marveled at her mind, realizing she was more than just a child. She was a being capable of learning and understanding at a rate far beyond human children. But with these new abilities came warning signs. Every now and then, Lyra's gaze would drift toward the horizon, toward the desert beyond the colony walls. Her ears twitched, her body stiffened, and a low hum would escape her lips. Ethan noticed it immediately. "Do you hear something, Lyra?" he asked gently, kneeling beside her. She turned her glowing eyes to him and clicked softly, a sound that carried urgency. Then she darted toward the outer gates, stopping just short of the sensor fence. Ethan followed, concern rising. The desert beyond was empty as far as the eye could see, yet Lyra's movement suggested she sensed something large, powerful, and intelligent. Her body was tense, ready to flee or defend, and Ethan realized that whatever she was sensing wasn't just nearby, it was approaching. He placed a hand on her small shoulder. "It's okay," he said, his voice firm but calm. "You're safe here. I'm here with you." Lyra's glowing eyes softened for a moment, and she pressed her tiny hand against his. Ethan felt a warmth and trust radiating from her, an unspoken bond forming between human and alien. He knew then that he would protect her no matter what. That evening, Ethan gathered the colony leaders for a meeting. They discussed the strange tracks and energy readings from the previous days. Some suggested that Lyra's species might be drawing attention from predators or other aliens in the area. Others feared she might be a spy, though Ethan argued against it. "She's a child," he said firmly. "She's hungry, weak, and scared. She didn't come here to harm us. She needs our help." The leaders reluctantly agreed to keep watch and strengthen the colony's defenses, but no one could shake the feeling that something far larger than Lyra would arrive soon. Over the next few days, Lyra became more adventurous. She would explore the colony under Ethan's watchful eye, observing the humans as they went about their tasks. She seemed fascinated by everything: the tools, the machines, the way humans moved and spoke. At the same time, her abilities grew. She could climb walls effortlessly, detect hidden dangers, and even sense when someone approached from a distance. Ethan began teaching her basic survival skills: how to move silently, how to read the desert terrain, how to spot signs of danger. She absorbed the lessons with eagerness and intelligence. Yet he noticed that she often paused, looking toward the horizon, as if waiting for someone or something to appear. One evening, while Ethan repaired a broken generator, he felt Lyra's hand on his shoulder. "Danger," she whispered, the words soft but urgent. Her glowing eyes were fixed on the desert. Ethan followed her gaze and saw nothing at first, but then a ripple in the sand caught his attention. Something massive was moving just beyond the dunes. The shape was indistinct, but its size and speed made it clear. It was not an animal. "Stay here," he instructed calmly. Though his heart raced, he grabbed a rifle, loading it carefully but keeping the weapon steady. Lyra crouched beside him, alert but trusting. As they watched, the figure slowed at the edge of the colony's sensors, observing silently. Ethan's mind raced. Whatever this was, it was intelligent, cautious, and undeniably aware of Lyra. The colony lights flickered briefly, and the shape shifted. Ethan realized then that they were being studied. Not attacked, yet studied. And the intelligence behind those movements sent a chill down his spine. He knelt beside Lyra. "Do you know it?" he asked softly. She pressed her small hand to his chest and clicked, a sound filled with recognition and warning. Then she pointed toward the figure with a trembling finger. Ethan understood. This was someone or something connected to her, protective, powerful, and potentially dangerous. Over the next few days, Ethan focused on building trust and communication with Lyra. He taught her more human words, more complex concepts. He introduced her to other colonists, showing her that humans could be kind, patient, and brave. The colony began to accept her as one of their own, though fear still lingered in the back of their minds. Lyra, for her part, seemed to understand more about human nature than anyone expected. She could sense fear, trust, and courage in the people around her. She responded to acts of kindness, and when humans acted selfishly or recklessly, she hesitated, her glowing eyes showing disapproval. Ethan marveled at her insight. She was small, fragile, and yet she possessed wisdom beyond her apparent age. He felt a growing sense of responsibility, knowing that her safety depended on him, and perhaps the survival of the colony itself might depend on their bond. One night, as they sat together under the twin sun's fading light, Lyra suddenly looked toward the horizon and hummed a long, low note. Ethan followed her gaze, and for the first time he felt true fear. The desert was quiet, yet the sense of being watched was overwhelming. Whatever was out there was approaching, moving with purpose and patience. Ethan knew then that Lyra's arrival had not gone unnoticed. She turned to him, her small hand resting on his arm, her glowing eyes filled with both trust and warning. Ethan understood her message clearly. Help was coming, but it might not be friendly. He clenched his fists, a new determination rising within him. He had rescued her, fed her, and protected her, but the real challenge was just beginning. The bond they had formed would be tested, and Ethan knew that only courage, intelligence, and humanity could see them through the trials ahead. And far beyond the colony, something large and powerful stirred in the desert, something that was aware of Lyra, aware of Ethan, and aware of the humans who had dared to show kindness to a starving child from another world. The future was uncertain, but one thing was clear. The arrival of Lyra was only the beginning. The mother, strong, dangerous, and intelligent, was on her way, and with her would come a challenge unlike anything Ethan or the colony had ever faced. Ethan took a deep breath, looking down at Lyra. "We'll face it together," he said softly. "No matter what comes, I won't let you face it alone." Lyra clicked softly, pressing her small hand to his chest, and for the first time, Ethan felt a deep, unspoken connection. Not just between human and alien child, but between two beings who had found trust in each other amidst a harsh, dangerous world. The desert night stretched on, full of silence, stars, and the unspoken promise of coming danger, and somewhere beyond the horizon, a powerful presence began to move toward them, aware of every sound, every movement, and every heartbeat. Ethan Cade stood at the edge of the colony, his eyes scanning the desert horizon. For days he had sensed something moving beyond the dunes, something massive, intelligent, and deliberate. Lyra, the small alien child he had rescued, crouched beside him, her glowing eyes fixed on the same distant point. Unlike before, she was tense now, her small body coiled like a spring, ready for action. "Do you see her?" Ethan asked softly, careful not to startle her. Lyra clicked a low, urgent sound and pointed toward the horizon. The wind shifted, carrying a faint, heavy rhythm in the sand. Ethan's stomach tightened. Whatever was coming, it was no ordinary creature. Then he saw it. A massive shape emerged from the dunes, moving with purpose. Towering over the desert, the alien's sleek, armor-like scales glinted in the sunlight. Its head was elongated, with eyes that burned with intelligence and awareness. Each step pressed deep impressions into the sand, a rhythm that seemed to announce authority and power. This was no random predator. This was Lyra's parent, and she was clearly aware of every human in the colony. Ethan's first instinct was to raise his weapon, but something in the mother's stance made him hesitate. She did not charge, did not roar or attack. Instead, she stopped at the edge of the colony, her glowing eyes scanning the humans, assessing them with a calm but dangerous curiosity. Lyra rushed forward instinctively, calling out in her melodic language. The mother's head turned and her gaze softened just enough to show recognition. The tension in Lyra's body melted for a moment, replaced by a strange relief. Ethan lowered his rifle slightly, keeping his hands visible. "I'm Ethan," he said carefully. "I helped her. I didn't mean any harm." The mother's eyes narrowed slightly, analyzing him. Then, in a motion that was fluid and almost graceful for a creature of her size, she stepped closer. Each movement carried power and authority. Ethan could feel the energy radiating from her, an intelligence beyond human comprehension, tempered with a protective instinct toward her child. The colony panicked. Humans shouted, some grabbing weapons, others backing toward the center of the settlement. Ethan raised a hand. "Stay calm. She's not attacking." But the mother's presence alone was intimidating. Her scales shimmered with a subtle pattern, and her massive frame blocked the view of the rising sun. Ethan realized that this was a test. She was assessing the humans as much as the humans were assessing her. Lyra ran to her mother, wrapping her small arms around one of the massive claws. The mother bent her head, nudging her child gently, and emitted a low vibrating hum that resonated through the air. Ethan felt the sound in his chest. It was powerful, filled with emotion but controlled. This was a being that demanded respect. Ethan stepped forward carefully. "I'm here to help," he said. "I've been taking care of Lyra. I promise we mean no harm." The mother tilted her head, studying him intently. Her glowing eyes locked onto Ethan's, searching for honesty, courage, and intelligence. She made a sound, a combination of clicks and vibrations, that Lyra responded to instantly. The mother's gaze swept across the colony, taking in the humans, the buildings, and the tools. She paused at the scouts who were frozen with fear, then returned her attention to Ethan. It became clear she was evaluating whether the humans were trustworthy. One wrong move, one act of aggression, and Ethan feared she would unleash her full power. He could see it in her stance, in the subtle flex of her limbs, and in the tiny sparks of energy that flickered along her scales. Ethan decided to take a risk. He knelt slightly, lowering himself in a gesture of submission but keeping his eyes on her. "We are capable of kindness," he said firmly. "We help those who are in need. Lyra needed us and we helped her. That is the truth." The mother's gaze lingered on him, then flicked to Lyra, who looked back at Ethan. It was a silent exchange, an understanding forming that humans could be brave and compassionate, even in the face of the unknown. Suddenly, a loud shout came from one of the outer gates. A young colonist, panicked, had raised his rifle and pointed it at the mother. In an instant, the massive creature's body tensed. Her eyes blazed brighter, and a low roar resonated through the desert, shaking sand from the dunes. Ethan moved quickly, putting himself between the colonist and the alien. "No," he shouted. "Don't do it. She will not attack if we do not provoke her." The young colonist froze, fear overtaking confusion. The mother's eyes narrowed, and for a moment Ethan thought she might attack. But then Lyra stepped forward, her small hand reaching toward the human. She clicked and hummed in a way that seemed to calm both the child and the mother. The massive alien lowered her stance slightly, letting the tension ease. She studied Ethan again, then Lyra, then the colony. It was clear she had made her decision. Aggression would be met with consequence, but patience, respect, and kindness could earn her trust. Ethan exhaled slowly, relief washing over him. The colony's leaders moved forward cautiously. "We must respect her," Ethan said, gesturing toward the mother. "She is intelligent, protective, and she values life, especially her child's. We need to prove that we are worthy of her trust." Over the next hours, Ethan worked with the colony to establish communication and routines that respected the mother's presence. Lyra stayed close to her mother, learning signals and understanding the nuances of her language. She became a bridge, translating her mother's clicks and hums into gestures and expressions humans could begin to understand. The mother demonstrated her intelligence in subtle ways. She pointed toward sources of water, detected dangerous sandstorms before they formed, and even helped guide humans away from unstable terrain. Her presence, once feared, became an opportunity for learning. The colonists began to see her as an ally, though still a powerful and dangerous one. Ethan spent time observing their interactions. He noticed that the mother responded not just to physical actions, but to moral and emotional signals. Acts of bravery, selflessness, and careful thought earned respect, while recklessness and aggression drew warning glances. It became clear that to live in harmony with this alien presence, humans would need to prove their humanity in every sense: courage, empathy, and intelligence. As the sun set, casting golden light across the desert, Ethan and Lyra stood together watching the mother patrol the perimeter. Lyra reached up, her small hand brushing against his arm. She clicked softly, a sound of reassurance but also of warning. Ethan nodded. He understood. The mother had come not just to protect her child but to evaluate the humans themselves. The future of the colony and of their fragile peace depended on how they acted from this moment onward. That night, Ethan could not sleep. He walked among the colony huts, observing the humans and the alien. He realized that fear alone would not keep them safe. They would need to demonstrate intelligence, compassion, and teamwork. The mother's presence was a challenge, yes, but also a chance to prove humanity's potential. Lyra slept beside her mother in the open courtyard, her small body curled safely against the massive form. Ethan looked at them and felt a deep responsibility. He had rescued a starving child, but now he faced the greater task, protecting her from both external threats and ensuring the humans earned the trust of her powerful parent. He took a deep breath, feeling the night air heavy with tension and possibility. Whatever came next, whatever dangers or tests, the colony would face them together. Humanity would have to show its strength not through weapons or force, but through courage, kindness, and ingenuity. Ethan smiled faintly. He had no doubt that Lyra's mother would soon test them further. The lessons of survival, trust, and moral courage were only beginning, and beyond the desert something else stirred. Another presence, observing, waiting. The arrival of Lyra's mother was not the end of danger. It was the beginning of a new challenge, one that would force humans to rise to their highest potential. Ethan looked down at Lyra, brushing a strand of silver hair from her glowing eyes. "We'll face it," he whispered. "Together, and we'll show them what humans are capable of." Lyra clicked softly, a sound that seemed to carry understanding and agreement. Ethan knew then that the bond between human and alien child, and now her mother, was unbreakable. Their fate was intertwined, and the coming days would test the limits of courage, intelligence, and the very nature of humanity itself. The desert night stretched on, filled with stars, silence, and the quiet hum of an alien presence that had come not to destroy, but to observe, protect, and challenge. Ethan braced himself. The real test had only just begun. The morning sun cast long, warm beams across the desert colony. Ethan Cade stood at the center of the settlement, observing the massive alien who had come to protect her child. Lyra stayed close to her mother, her small hand resting on the massive creature's claw. The air was tense, charged with anticipation. Ethan could feel that today would not be like any other day. The mother had remained quiet for hours, but her presence alone communicated purpose. She had begun testing the colony subtly, guiding humans away from dangerous terrain, observing their reactions to simple tasks, and watching how they treated one another. Her intelligence was clear. Her judgment was precise. Ethan gathered the colony leaders. "She's not here to destroy us," he said firmly. "She's testing us, our courage, our intelligence, and our moral choices. We have to prove that we are capable of more than just survival. We have to show her humanity's best." Some of the colonists nodded while others frowned with skepticism. "And if we fail?" one engineer asked quietly. Ethan looked toward the desert. "Then she won't trust us, and I don't know what she will do if we betray that trust. But we will not fail. We can't." The mother's first test came sooner than anyone expected. As the colonists were gathering supplies for the day, a massive sandstorm suddenly formed in the distance. Its winds twisted violently, carrying fine grains that could easily strip paint from metal. The storm was moving quickly toward the colony. Ethan felt a pulse of warning from Lyra, who hissed softly and pointed toward the approaching storm. The mother moved swiftly, positioning herself between the storm and the humans. Her massive claws dug into the sand, and her body emitted a low hum that vibrated through the air. It was both a warning and a signal. The colonists froze. The storm was dangerous, and many had never faced such severe weather on this planet. Panic began to rise. Ethan raised his hands. "Listen to me. We can survive this, but we must follow her signals. She's showing us the way." Under the mother's guidance, Ethan led the humans to secure shelters, using Lyra's small gestures as additional cues. The alien's movements were precise. She pointed toward higher ground and safer areas while protecting the colony from debris with her massive body. The storm hit with full force, but no lives were lost. Humans were amazed. They had survived because of the mother's wisdom and Ethan's ability to trust and follow her lead. When the storm passed, the mother observed the humans. She lowered her head slightly, her glowing eyes scanning each person. Ethan noticed a subtle relaxation in her stance, a small acknowledgement that they had acted wisely. Lyra clapped her small hands together, a sound of joy and relief. But this was only the first test. Over the next days, the mother began more intricate challenges. She led the humans to hidden terrain traps, areas where the sand concealed unstable cliffs and hidden crevices. They had to navigate carefully, relying on her signals and their own judgment. Some tasks were physical, requiring strength and endurance, while others were mental, demanding strategy and problem-solving. Ethan noticed that each test also had a moral component. Humans who acted selfishly, trying to rush ahead or take unnecessary risks, were corrected by the mother. Her presence alone was enough to make them reconsider. Those who worked together, shared resources, and protected one another gained subtle approval. She was not teaching through words but through action and observation, evaluating character as much as skill. Lyra became an essential guide. She translated her mother's gestures and clicks into signs humans could understand. Her small body moved quickly and confidently, showing that she too had learned from her mother. Ethan watched in amazement as the child, once weak and starving, now acted as a bridge between the colony and an alien intelligence far beyond their understanding. Tensions began to rise within the colony. Not all humans were eager to submit to an alien's guidance. A small group of miners became frustrated, believing they could navigate the terrain and survive without following the mother's signals. Ethan confronted them. "You think you can do better?" he asked calmly. "You've seen what she can do. She's protecting us, guiding us. If you ignore her, it's not just your life at risk, it's everyone's." The miners hesitated but didn't fully comply. The mother's eyes shifted toward them, narrowing slightly. Her presence grew more intense and the air vibrated with warning energy. The miners froze, realizing that disobedience could have consequences. One by one, they fell into line, following her signals more carefully. Ethan understood then that the mother's lessons were not just about survival. They were about trust, discipline, and respect. Humanity was being tested on every level, physically, mentally, and morally. One evening, as the twin suns set over the desert, the mother led Ethan and a small group of colonists to a rocky canyon beyond the colony. There she pointed to a narrow path between two towering cliffs. The canyon was unstable, with loose rocks and sudden drops. It was a dangerous test of precision and teamwork. Ethan studied the path carefully. "We have to trust her guidance," he said, turning to the group. "Move slowly, watch the signals, and help each other." The humans began to navigate the canyon step by careful step. The mother's massive presence followed closely, ready to protect but not interfere unless necessary. Lyra ran ahead, pointing out hazards with her small hands and soft clicks. Her confidence had grown remarkably. She no longer hesitated or trembled. Halfway through the canyon, a sudden rock slide occurred. Large boulders tumbled down, threatening to block the path and crush anyone in their way. Panic erupted. Ethan shouted orders, trying to maintain calm. The mother reacted immediately, using her massive claws to redirect falling rocks, while Lyra guided humans to safe spots. Through careful coordination and trust, the group reached the other side unharmed. Ethan felt a surge of pride and relief. They had passed another test, relying not on strength alone but on communication, cooperation, and moral courage. That night, the colony gathered to discuss what they had learned. "She's teaching us," Ethan said, addressing everyone. "It's not just about survival. She wants us to show courage, intelligence, and empathy. We have to rise to the challenge, not just for ourselves, but for her and for Lyra." The mother watched silently from a distance, her glowing eyes observing each person. Ethan sensed approval, though it was subtle, almost imperceptible. He knew that these tests were only growing more complex and the lessons more demanding. Lyra climbed onto his shoulders, resting her small hands on his head. "Click, she whispered softly. A sound that Ethan had learned meant both reassurance and caution. He smiled down at her. "I know," he said quietly. "We're learning, and we'll do better. I promise." In the coming days, the mother's tests continued to challenge the humans in ways they had never imagined. She introduced complex problems that required strategy, negotiation, and foresight. They had to work together to find water in hidden caves, identify safe paths through unstable terrain, and protect each other from natural hazards. Through these trials, Ethan observed something remarkable. Humans were adapting, learning faster than anyone could have predicted. They were not only surviving but improving, rising to meet challenges with creativity and courage. The mother's presence had awakened something in them, a spark of potential that had long been dormant. Lyra, small but determined, became a symbol of hope and guidance. Her intelligence, combined with her mother's protective instincts, created a bridge between humans and alien life. She was proof that kindness and trust could yield extraordinary results, even in the most unlikely circumstances. As the twin moons rose over the desert, Ethan stood with Lyra and the mother at the edge of the colony. The lessons of the day had been harsh but fair. The humans had begun to understand that true strength was not measured in weapons or power, but in courage, intelligence, empathy, and teamwork. Ethan looked at the massive alien, then down at Lyra. "We'll keep learning," he whispered. "We'll prove that humans are capable of more than you think." Lyra clicked softly in response, pressing her small hand against his chest. The mother's glowing eyes met Ethan's, and for the first time he felt a sense of recognition and respect. They were not yet equals, but the bond had grown stronger. The desert night stretched on, filled with stars and the quiet hum of an alien presence that demanded respect, observation, and growth. Ethan understood that the coming days would be even more challenging. More tests, more lessons, and perhaps more danger awaited. But one truth was clear. Humanity was beginning to rise to the challenge. Through courage, compassion, and intelligence, they were proving their worth. And with Lyra as their guide, they had a chance to not just survive, but to truly grow. The mother remained vigilant, her massive frame a constant reminder of the stakes. But Ethan felt hope. He knew that together, humans and aliens could face the trials ahead, and that the bond forged through trust, kindness, and courage would be the key to their survival. The night air was heavy with anticipation. Tomorrow the tests would continue, and Ethan, Lyra, and the colony were ready. The twin suns rose over the desert colony, casting warm light across red sands and metal structures. Ethan Cade stood at the edge of the settlement watching the horizon. The past weeks had been filled with trials, lessons, and moments of fear, but also courage and growth. Lyra, now more confident and agile, ran along the perimeter with a grace that reflected both her childlike energy and her alien heritage. Her mother, massive and majestic, patrolled nearby, her glowing eyes scanning for danger while silently observing the humans. The bond between human and alien had grown, but Ethan knew this was only the beginning. The day began with a new challenge. Scouts reported unusual activity beyond the dunes. Strange energy readings and massive footprints indicated the approach of another alien species. One aggressive, territorial, and far less tolerant than Lyra's mother. This was no ordinary threat. It was a danger that could destroy both humans and the protective alien family if not handled carefully. Ethan gathered the colony leaders and Lyra. "We have to work together," he said, determination in his voice. "This is bigger than just survival. We're going to show them, every being out there, that humans can be brave, intelligent, and compassionate." The mother moved closer to Ethan, her massive frame radiating a calm, controlled energy. Lyra pressed her small hand to his arm, clicking softly, a sound that conveyed both reassurance and warning. Ethan felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on him. He had rescued Lyra, but now together they were responsible for the safety of the colony and the fragile alliance forming with her mother. As the first signs of the aggressors appeared, a group of large, predatory aliens moving with precision and aggression, the humans tensed. Weapons were raised, though Ethan knew that raw firepower alone would not win this encounter. The mother's massive presence acted as a deterrent, but she had made it clear humans would need to demonstrate intelligence, courage, and teamwork to survive. The aliens advanced quickly, and Ethan organized the humans into defensive positions, guided by signals from Lyra and her mother. The mother's eyes glowed brighter as she calculated each movement, predicting the aggressors' actions. She emitted a low hum which seemed to resonate with the humans, calming fear and synchronizing their efforts. Lyra darted between humans, pointing out hazards and directing attention where it was most needed. Despite her small size, her energy and intelligence made her a critical link between humans and her mother. Ethan watched her, amazed at how much she had grown in just a few weeks. The aggressors struck first, attempting to flank the colony from the rocky cliffs nearby. Ethan led a small team to intercept, relying on strategy and observation rather than brute force. The humans worked with precision, following the mother's subtle signals. Lyra guided them, clicking and humming, translating her mother's intentions into gestures they could understand. The first clash was intense. Humans used speed, coordination, and intelligence to navigate the battlefield, avoiding traps and outmaneuvering the attackers. The mother intervened only when necessary, using her massive claws and strength to protect humans from fatal danger, but never taking control completely. She allowed the humans to act, to think, and to prove their worth. Ethan realized then that this was the final test. It was not just about survival. It was about demonstrating humanity's potential. They had learned courage, teamwork, and empathy. Now they had to apply it under pressure. The battle raged through the rocky terrain. Humans coordinated perfectly, moving as a unit, protecting the weak and using the environment to their advantage. The aggressors were powerful, but they lacked the understanding, strategy, and moral consideration that the humans had learned. Lyra's mother fought alongside them, but her actions were calculated. She protected humans who hesitated or were in danger, but she allowed them to take initiative, showing trust in their abilities. The humans responded, inspired by her confidence, working together to fend off the aggressors. Ethan spotted a group of humans trapped near a cliff. A massive predator approached, its claws ready to strike. He shouted instructions, and with Lyra's guidance, they moved as a coordinated unit, using rocks and debris to block the attack. The predator lunged, but the humans acted as one, and the mother intervened just enough to redirect the creature without harming it unnecessarily. After tense minutes that felt like hours, the aggressors began to retreat, unable to break the humans' coordinated efforts. They moved back across the desert, leaving the colony and Lyra's family unharmed. The humans had survived not by brute strength, but by applying everything they had learned: courage, intelligence, teamwork, and empathy. The mother lowered her massive head, her glowing eyes scanning the humans. Ethan stepped forward, chest heaving, knowing this moment would define their relationship. Lyra pressed her hand against his chest, her small eyes glowing with excitement and relief. The mother's massive claws shifted slightly, and she emitted a low hum, a sound of approval. She studied each human, her gaze lingering on Ethan. Then, in a gesture that was almost ceremonial, she extended a massive claw toward him. Ethan understood. This was not a threat, but an acknowledgement of trust and respect. He approached cautiously and placed his hand against hers. For a moment, there was silence, a mutual understanding passing between human and alien. Ethan felt the weight of the bond they had formed, the trust, the courage, and the shared experience of survival. Lyra ran between them, chirping excitedly, her small hands pressed to both Ethan and her mother. The three of them, human child, and alien parent, stood together united in purpose and trust. The colony erupted in cheers, relieved and amazed at what had transpired. Humans had faced a deadly threat, navigated complex challenges, and proven that their potential was more than physical strength. It was moral courage, intelligence, and cooperation. Over the next days, the colony and Lyra's mother began to work more closely. Humans learned from her, advanced perception, survival skills, and strategies for navigating the harsh desert environment. She taught them how to read subtle signs in the sand, detect changes in wind patterns, and anticipate natural hazards. Humans adapted quickly, their ingenuity and courage complementing her natural abilities. Lyra became a true bridge between the two species. She communicated signals, translated gestures, and helped humans understand the subtle lessons of her mother. Her intelligence, once apparent only in small ways, now shone clearly, showing humans the value of trust, patience, and empathy. Ethan often stood back and observed, amazed at the growth he saw in both humans and aliens. What began as an act of kindness, feeding a starving child, had led to something extraordinary. Humans had proven themselves worthy of trust, and in doing so, had forged a fragile but powerful alliance. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the desert, Ethan stood with Lyra and her mother at the edge of the colony. The desert stretched endlessly, quiet except for the hum of alien energy and the soft sounds of the settlement. Ethan reflected on what had transpired. Fear had turned to respect, uncertainty into trust and danger into an opportunity for growth. He looked down at Lyra. "You've grown so much," he whispered. "And we've learned from you too." Lyra clicked softly, pressing her hand against his chest. Her mother lowered her massive head, eyes glowing with recognition. Ethan knew that the bond they shared was unique, something that could change the relationship between humans and alien species forever. The colony had survived. The aggressors had retreated, and humans had shown what they were capable of: courage, intelligence, and compassion, even in the face of beings far stronger and wiser than themselves. Ethan smiled faintly. This was just the beginning. With trust, patience, and respect, humans and aliens could coexist, learn from each other, and face the challenges of the universe together. Lyra ran ahead, small and swift, exploring the edge of the settlement. Her mother followed, majestic and protective. Ethan walked beside them, feeling the weight of responsibility but also a sense of hope. The desert night was calm. Stars glittered above, twin moons casting silver light over the sands. For the first time since Lyra had arrived, Ethan felt true peace. Humanity had been tested, and it had risen to meet the challenge. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new lessons, and perhaps new dangers. But the bond forged between human, alien child, and protective mother was strong. It was a fragile alliance, yes, but one built on courage, trust, and compassion. And that bond, Ethan knew, was stronger than fear or conflict. As the night deepened, he whispered once more to Lyra, "We'll face whatever comes. Together." She clicked in response, a sound filled with understanding and agreement. Ethan looked at the massive alien beside them and saw the faintest flicker of approval in her glowing eyes. The desert stretched endlessly before them, full of mystery, challenge, and promise. But together, humans and aliens had shown that kindness, courage, and intelligence could create something stronger than fear. A fragile alliance capable of facing any future. And for Ethan, Lyra and her mother, the adventure had only just begun.